Yeah, just been, I'll move it.
Okay, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Alderman O'Brien is present. Alderwoman Timmons. Alderman Moran.
Present.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Gavea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemens. Alderman Sanat.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
And Alderwoman Kelly. And Madam President, Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
That's,
10.
11 members present.
Thank you. Also in attendance this evening is Mayor Jim Donchis and Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton. As is customary in these hearings, I will turn the meeting over to the chairman of the Budget Review Committee, Alderman Dowd.
Okay, this evening, we're going to have public hearing on 6 different resolutions, and so we would ask that as much as possible, don't repeat what someone before you has said. If you want to agree with them, that'd be fine, so we can get through these fairly quickly. The first public hearing is R-24-106, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $15 million for renovations to the 2 parking garages. Is there anyone here that's going to present for the city to answer any amplifying questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. May I approach and sit up
Yes.
here? I believe there's a PowerPoint, if I could access it or grab the keyboard and the mouse.
September. First
Oh,
one?
perfect, thank you. And you may need to pull it up on screen.
You might need to help him.
Working just like it always does.
Okay.
Tim,
Being
I think you need to help.
totally a wizard in computers, everybody want to give a
Wait.
hand?
Yeah.
Director Cummings, you want to come up and get it on screen?
Yeah.
I think you might need to do something to display it over here.
Oh, that is correct.
It just has to say clerk's desk.
Yeah,
Clerk desk,
there you go.
okay.
That-
All right.
That's not the one though, right?
Yep, there you go.
That one?
Yes, please. So again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. Also with me is Liz Hannum, Director of Economic Development, and Jill Stansfield, the city's parking manager. I'd ask them to come up and join at the podium here in case there's any very specific or technical questions. I did want to present a couple slides just so there was something for a matter of the record. I do know that okay, here we go again. Try that again. All right,
Would they like to come up and sit up here, the 2 seats?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as they approach, I just wanted to make sure we had something for the record. This is a condensed presentation that was given to the Infrastructure Committee back at the end of the summer. We're here tonight seeking $15 million for the total project cost of essentially a 3-phased project. Phase 1 deals with structural and concrete repairs, drainage repairs, facade and cleaning improvements, stairwell repairs. Phase 2 is lighting, traffic flow improvements, office upgrades, provide city vehicle storage and rearranging the traffic flow. Phase 3 would deal with, I apologize, Phase 2 would deal with aesthetics and facade upgrades. Phase 3 would deal with office type renovations. And we are more than 85% complete at this point for the project, for the Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 2 and Phase 3, we would be looking to develop more refined plans as time goes on, staying within the $15 million total project cost, and as our CM has given us an allowance for. And so we're hoping to move forward tonight with authorization for the $15 million. We are looking to start construction as quickly as possible. For those of you who may not be aware, the project, the garage, both the Elm and the High Street garage are in much need of deferred capital maintenance, and it is starting to become an issue. So that's it I have for slides for this one. Just wanted to give everyone a quick, brief overview of what we're looking to do. We went into much more detail, as I said, at the Infrastructure Committee. I'll hand it over to Jill Stansfield and Liz Hannum if they want to add anything else.
Do any of the aldermen have any amplifying information they'd like to glean from the presenters before we move on? Oh, Alderman Moran.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. Way back when we approved going over the budget, you brought in emergency management. And someone made statements about the permit guy or whatever who determines if things need to be safe or not. And I had gleaned that from those statements that this thing was imminently about to collapse, and if we didn't pay for it, that it would be a devastation. That's how I interpret it. Whether those words were said or not is not what I'm trying to put out there. But is it at imminent risk of falling apart? Are we pressuring someone in the permit department or whomever department to keep this thing open when it shouldn't? Or was it all just a performative piece on the city's part?
Director Cummings?
Yes, so those words were never stated, and so I want to be clear. The garages are not in imminent threat of being shut down. However, they are being closely monitored and watched, and we have a very sophisticated and professional building inspector who's in the garages daily, I would say, or close to that, who's looking at things. And if and when the time came that it did become imminent, he would absolutely shut the garages down. But that is why we are trying to do this project, to stay ahead of it. We are ahead of it to date, and we want to continue to stay ahead of it, but we are at the mercy of the weather. So if we have a bad storm, if we have a bad winter, it will deteriorate the garages faster than if not. And so that's what we want to make sure we're trying to do, is work as fast and as quickly as possible to try to continue to stay ahead of this issue.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, first, Mr. Chairman, just a minor addition. We welcome Alderman Lopez, who attended the meeting at 1907 or 707 for the non-military type. But I would like to say to my fellow aldermen, working with this project for the last several years with the garages, if this was like one's house, you know, one were to spend the money to repair, whether it be the paint job, the gutter, or something else. I mean, it's not really a beautification project. That's the trouble when you own infrastructure. You've got to maintain it, or else it's going to end up falling down around you. And are we going to have a plaque with our name on it? No, probably not, because this is a regular maintenance type of thing that really needs to do. And it's very critical, in my opinion, from what I hear from the engineers and everybody else. Our own city engineer strongly recommends that we continue with this work. If we want this garage to have the life expectancy that the taxpayers, when they first built it, wanted out of it, then we gotta spend the money and repair some of the damage. I mean, true, we're fighting Mother Nature, but that's part of owning a parking garage. So it's something that needs to be done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Jill?
Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director.
Sorry, Liz.
Okay. I will just add too that we have pulled out a few things that will be done before snow starts this year that will get us through the winter. So there were things that may have come to a head this winter, but we are getting ahead of it, and we pulled it from our operating budget to make sure that we get through that winter.
Alderman Lopez, did you have something?
Yes, and I hope this wasn't covered in the presentation that I was tardy to, so my apologies. But if funding is approved, we do move forward with the bonding process. I know, Mr. Chair, from firsthand experience, as you do, that oversight and updating transparency and accounting are important to confirm, in the public's eye, or have available for the public's eye, how a project is proceeding, when you can expect it to be completed, how bids are being, decided. And I think later we'll probably, if we haven't already, the Stello Stadium project is at joint special. It's, all of the purchase orders are discussed in public. That would this project be under the budget committee here? Would we expect a similar degree of trackability, accountability, oversight?
On the second half of your question, yes, but Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. So this would fall under the Infrastructure Committee or General Administration. It would not fall under a joint committee process. This is just general asset that the city has, and we would go through the normal course of process. This actually question came up earlier today, and what I could offer is we could make reports to the Infrastructure Committee more more regularly, if that's what everyone would like, to ensure that there's a comfort and with this project as it proceeds. Happy to do that.
But just if I may follow up.
Follow up?
A difference would be we approve all of the actions that are coming through joint special versus this where you would just be letting us know that you're doing it.
Director Cummings?
Yeah, that is true. However, we could come before you, and I commit to you that we would come before you if there was very specific design or material impacts to the project. The last thing I would want is you or any other stakeholder to be caught by surprise because there was a change. Now, that may mean that the Infrastructure Committee would need to meet more regularly, but with that being said, I know the Infrastructure Committee meets already a lot. And so we could add it onto an agenda if need be.
I think to clarify, I assume that you're going to go out for bids to get a general contractor to do the work?
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, we already did, and we have a construction manager procured for this project to proceed.
So there'll be a defined scope of work, and if there's any change in the scope of work, that would probably come back to infrastructure?
Yes.
Okay. I think that would satisfy what you're talking about, Alderman Elizabeth.
Yes.
Any other questions? Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just more of a statement. I'm sure Director Cummings would agree. Over the years, we have used the Infrastructure Committee to get information out there to the public. So there is the transparency, Feel free, folks, turn on Channel 16. You get to see my happy face, as we go through it. But, we receive this type of information. And so does it need to come to the full board for the vote? No. Director Cummings has been very, very good in providing the Infrastructure Committee updates on certain type of projects and stuff. So we will continue to do the same. If anybody has any suggestions on maybe, there's always room for improvement in my book for the Infrastructure Committee, please let me know. We'll see if we can incorporate that. But we really do try to get the information out there. So,
All right, before we go too far, This is going to be taken up at budget following these public hearings, where we can get into more detail, if there is any. But right now, if there's no other questions, amplifying questions, I'd like to call for the testimony in favor of this project.
My name is Fred T. Boom. I'm not speaking in favor of both. I'll do it in a minute. I have a bunch of questions. This is supposed to be a public hearing. This is not a place for aldermanic comments. They got their own budget meetings and aldermanic meetings and committee meetings. It's supposed to be strictly a public hearing.
This is the way we've been
And I
running
have
these meetings for quite
number-
some time.
And I have a number of questions, which is allowed per our ordinance.
The question,
Stop
no,
number
we'll
of
have the,
questions.
we'll have the comments pro and against, and then it's going to be taken up at budget right after this meeting.
I have questions during this public hearing. It's in the ordinance. I have a question right now, not limited by 15 minute, a 5 minute, or 3 minute comment. Now, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Cummings.
Are you speaking in favor right now?
I'm not speaking
or
in favor. I'll do it in a minute. I'm here to, are you familiar with the ordinances, Mr. Chairman?
I think so. I've been on this board for 15
Good.
years,
Are
so,
you familiar with the public hearing ordinances?
and I've run most of the public hearings, so
It allows comments and questions from the public, Mr. Chairman. If you don't.
that's why
consult
we
with your
have
attorney.
comments in favor and against.
I have questions for Mr. Cummings.
We'll go ahead and ask it. If you-
You know, we have questions in every one of these public hearings. And I don't expect to sit here and listen to aldermanic comments. This is a public hearing, not another aldermanic meeting.
So that we know what the public hearing is entailing, we always have some amplifying information from the persons that are presenting the resolution, so that the board has a full understanding of what's being discussed. It's just amplifying information for the board so that they can get straight what the resolution is entailing. It's not getting into any more detail beyond that. And it's the way we've been running public hearings for quite a few years, so
Yeah. And you've been running it incorrectly. That's what your public.
that's your opinion,
committee-
and you're entitled to your opinion.
No, sir. Check your ordinances. Now, let me get to the question. Mr. Cummings, is this particular contract for, what is it, $15 million? Is it currently on the contract?
Director Cummings?
No,
It is not currently on the contract. Is that correct?
correct.
Now, how do you know it's worth $15 million? Have you had detailed proposal?
Director Cummings, you want to explain that the design has been covered under a different set of dollars?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the design has been developed, and we're at approximately 90% design through Phase 1 and Phase 2. That third phase that I mentioned is a phase that we put an allowance in with confirmation from the construction manager who's been working with us along the way. We had enough design done where we had a construction manager actually provide us with a quote that they felt comfortable to give because they know that they would be entering into a GMP imminently, which is when we would be entering into contract.
That's the problem. You issue or you ask for authorization for bonds on projects, you have no firm understanding that'll meet the contract price. Now, for instance, construction manager, is he on the contract?
Yes.
And he's done the design? Who did the design?
Thornton Tomasetti.
Was that?
Thornton Tomasetti.
They did the preliminary design?
They've done more than the preliminary design, yes.
They produced drawings?
Yes,
So you're ready to go into contract with those drawings?
yes.
Okay. But normally should happen, Mr. Chair. It's always been common. Now, I know lately you haven't been following these procedures, but when you get a contract proposal, a firm bid that says, we will do this job, Hutter, Mr. Beal, whoever does the construction, we will do this job for $15 million firm with a guaranteed price. Then you are ready to issue an authorization for a bond. There's no need to issue an authorization for a bond until you have a firm price in hand. That's the procedure. That should be your procedure. Now, I'll come back on the comments, on the testimony against.
Are there any other comments in favor? Seeing none, comments in opposition? And please state your name and address for the record.
Fred T. Boom, I'll be back from everything on the chart.
Can you present charts?
Yeah, it's a public, this is a public hearing, sir, it's not a comment period. This chart, and I hope the camera, channel 16, I've handed out before, but nobody's commented on it, barely looked at it. This is a chart of the fiscal year's combined annual budget, starting in 2010, running all the way through this fiscal year. This chart shows the adopted budget.
Is this directly related to the item that we're talking about, or are you talking generally about budget issues?
Absolutely, sir. And what this shows is there were never supplemental budgets. You are meeting here because you've done supplemental budget approvals. This 15 million, whatever, for the garage is done through a supplemental appropriation. Now, if you look at it, there were hardly ever any supplemental appropriations for years until year 2022. They did enormous supplemental appropriations. 80 million, 23 million, 24 million, and now you've got 47.4 million. Your spending by this board is completely out of control. Your adopting budget is supposed to be an annual budget, that's supposed to be it. You're supposed to manage by the budget, but you have to do garages, wait till the next budget. If you have to spend $50 million on the garage, wait till the next budget. Don't sneak it in through a supplemental appropriation. Because what you're doing is you keep adding to the budget. And that supplemental appropriation becomes the baseline for the following year's budget. I don't understand how aldermen, now some of the aldermen probably don't understand any of this. But some of the aldermen, Mr. Sullivan as an example, others here, if you understands the mathematics. This garage should not be funded because it doesn't adopt it through the annual budget process. It became part of this $47.4 million override of spending cap as supplemental appropriation. That's not the way you should conduct your business. I'm very much opposed to this proposal.
Any other testimony in opposition?
Elizabeth Liu, 19 Roby Street. I'm not necessarily in opposition or in favor. I had a question whether Mr. Cummings described 85% complete, and I just wasn't clear, is that the project? Is that 85% of the project is complete?
Director Cummings, would you explain that that's the design, not the project actual work?
Correct.
Oh, okay, so it's the design. So that's basically what I wanted to ask. Is this, was this not covered in the capital improvement process that led up to the budget this year?
If I may, Ms. Chairman?
Director Cummings?
It was.
Yes, it was.
So this has been planned as part of the budget itself?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just for general information, we had an ad hoc committee set up on the Board of Aldermen that proceeded with determining which projects were the most critical to be done. and in this year, and that's where a lot of these resolutions are coming from. Any other testimony in opposition? Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor? Seeing none, once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none? I'll close the hearing on R-24-106 at 7:27 PM. I'd like to open the public hearing on R-24-107, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $2,142,351 for the purchase of one compactor and 2 refuge trucks for the solid waste Department of Four Hills landfill. Is there anyone that can come up and answer any amplifying questions? No, you're not, Mr. T-Boom, you're not ready to speak. I said you're not ready to speak. I haven't called for any testimony from there yet. Is there anyone from Public Works that would be here to answer any questions on this?
Mr. Chairman, Director Photo asked that I initiate and be here to help guide this conversation. We also have Mark Saunders from DPW if there's a specific technical question that arises. Mr. Chairman, the very specific ask is for 1 compactor, 2 refuse trucks to be bonded for a little over the $2.1 million. Appreciate your support for that this evening.
Question from the Alderman? All right. Oh, Alderman Tebow?
Just a quick one.
Thibodeau?
The compactor and the refuse, so the compactor is a typical trash compactor truck?
Yes.
Okay, so they're all 3 are
Yes.
vehicles? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and the cost is outlined for each is in the proposal, the resolution. All right, seeing none, I'll now open it up for testimony in favor.
I'm not speaking in favor at this point. I have some questions for Director Cummings.
Would you push name and address for the record, please?
T-Boom, 24 Cheyenne Drive. There's $2 million. Have you had a firm bid?
Rick Cummings?
Yes, I believe so, Mr. Chairman.
So you're ready to place us on the contract?
I'm sorry?
You're ready to place us on the contract?
That's my understanding. These are ready to go. They've been ready to go for quite a while now.
Yes, and the exact cost of each one of them is in the resolution.
I see that. I have it right in front of me. That's the way you're supposed to do all of these bonds. Every one of them.
Testimony in favor? Seeing no additional, none. Testimony in opposition?
Well, you'll see me popping up here on every one of these bond resolutions, except 2. Fred T-Boom, 24 Cheyenne.
Naming it, okay.
I showed you the chart. This is another one that came through a supplemental appropriation. Why would you buy trucks through a supplemental appropriation? Why, for the life of me, can't you approve all necessary things through the annual budget? What possesses you to pass $47 million of supplemental appropriations? Have you asked yourself that question? Have you asked yourself why? And what the tax burden is going to be? We're going to hear about tax rates tomorrow. But have you asked yourself that question? Why on earth are you doing this? Much opposed.
Any other testimony in opposition? Seeing none, any further testimony in favor? Seeing none, any other testimony in opposition? Seeing none, close the public hearing on R-24-108 at 7:31. And I'll open the public hearing on R-24-113 relative to the acceptance of $6 million of anticipated grant funds and to accept and appropriate an additional
Point of order,
$1,700,000.
Mr. Chairman, you skipped one. Sorry, you You were on 107, you have to go to
Oh,
108.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 108. Relative to the supplemental appropriation of $3,500,000 of assigned fund balance into capital project activity, police facilities improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and if I could just ask that the PowerPoint get switched, we have a separate one for this, again, just for the record.
No, just hit escape.
Escape.
Want me to, yep, there you go. Next one. Other one. Yep,
This
there
one.
you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. With me, I have Captain Tom Bolton. He will speak to the details in a second, but this project has been a long time coming. It falls under the Joint Infrastructure and Police Commission, and we've been working towards this project for quite a while now, and I'd ask Captain Bolton to say a few words.
Yes.
Thank you. Tom Bolton, Captain, Nashville Police. From a police department perspective, training is our most important service we can provide our officers. Law enforcement is a field that is growing increasingly complex, demands of an overburdened mental health system, sophisticated mass casualty events planned by perpetrators with sophisticated technology, and growing expectations placed upon professional law enforcement officers require that we equip officers better than we had before. Properly equipping officers goes far beyond physical equipment. Training is the only way to equip officers with decision-making tools necessary to perform their duties professionally in alignment with the high expectations we have for them. Officers need to assess information quickly and also act on their assessments, often in high-stakes and high-stress situations, with little or no supervision time for input in those situations. There are very few professions that are subject to similar challenges. Training is what sets apart professional top agencies. Training is what allows us to drill high expectations into officers and have confidence in their ability to deliver on those high expectations. If you look at departments that have been embroiled in reports of improper responses or other unfavorable issues, you will often find a lack of appropriate training is involved. MPD, like all law enforcement agencies, has experienced concerns with recruitment and retention of officers. New officers and their families want to know they will be provided with the most current training available to be successful. We want to be able to demonstrate MPD's commitment to our officers and to our community by showing that we understand the critical need for high-level training. The Nashville Police Department is heralded as one of the premier law enforcement agencies in the country. The city of Nashville is consistently recognized as one of the safest cities in the country. This is largely due to the caliber of officers we hire and the training we are able to provide them. To continue at such a level, we need to stay competitive with other agencies in terms of what they are able to offer for training, as well as ensure we equip them with the most effective training we can for the purpose of continuing to deliver the best law enforcement services we can to the community. What is important for a police training site? Accessibility, cleanliness, and the ability to replicate realistic environments to include replicating house rooms, office spaces, and schools. And keeping consistent with national best practice training models, more frequent training in realistic environments creates conditions where officers make better critical, often split-second decisions. NPD recently acquired the building at 9 Riverside Street, which had previously been the DPW administrative building. The building will be used for in-service classroom training, as well as scenario-based training for defensive tactics, judgment testing, and building searches. This project also includes the addition of a garage bay on the MPD campus. MPD is fortunate to have specific purpose vehicles for emergency operations. These are valuable vehicles, and not surprisingly, they are costly to repair if not stored properly. Storing emergency vehicles off-site creates time delay during an emergency, which is not ideal. Having a garage on-site allows us to have all of our equipment within arm's length so it can be best leveraged at a critical time. Finally, the MPD campus fencing is decades old. Many sections are now deteriorated. It is no longer a secure premises. In looking at events of violence enacted at police facilities within the past 5 years, some not far from here, we have an understanding of how important it is to have a police facility be secured with an outer perimeter. Thank you for your time and consideration. We appreciate the commitment to partnering with us to keep the city of Nashua safe and a desirable place to live.
Thank you, Captain.
And so, Mr.
Director
Chairman.
Cummings?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chairman. So essentially, this project is at 90% design. We are looking to start construction as imminently as possible. We have Whiting Turner as our construction manager. We have put this out to the construction manager for proposals. It's coming in at just about 2.6 million. Total project cost is within budget at 3.5 million. That includes all our soft costs and contingencies, along with other smaller contracts that we would need to do to continue moving this project along. There's one design element that we're still trying to work through, and that's relative to shoring up a retaining wall and a generator. These issues we will work through as we get through the springtime season. It is not imminent for us to have these answered right now, so that's why we're at 90% design. But what is imminent is us getting under contract to try to start the construction project. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, we're asking for your favorable approval tonight of 3.5 million in what would be considered cash supplemental appropriation to move this project forward. I do want to take a moment and pause and just clarify some of the comments that were made by the previous speaker. The previous speaker would be accurate if he was describing what is typically referred to as a design bid build process. We are not pursuing that process with these last two projects. These projects are often referred to as CM at risk, and that is a different type of construction methodology and approach, more common when you do vertical type construction. The reason why you often go in this direction is because time is our enemy. And if we have a construction manager procured, working with us, and understands the project, they can help us more accurately procure and construct the project and do it while the project is still being designed, if there's a sufficient enough level of design done in advance, which is what you've all seen this evening. If we were to miss the window of going out and actually putting this under contract with a GMP, you'll see construction costs escalate something in the order of magnitude of more than 10%. And the best time to go out into the market for the trades is in the late winter, early spring, which is what we're trying to do right now. And so that's why it's really important for us to try to get this money authorized so we can move this project along and actually put people under contract so we can actually get the best pricing for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any of the aldermen have any clarifying questions they'd like to ask? Alderman Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Captain Bolton. The retaining wall, I think we had a conversation, was it regarding this retaining wall, that the costs came down after thinking about using the land in a different way?
That's correct.
Follow up?
Follow up?
Remember this from last BDC meeting. How much were we able to save based on that suggestion with the retaining wall?
Two different models were presented. One came in at $400,000 to replace and rebuild the existing wall, and another one came in to use the land. It came in somewhere around $170,000.
Follow up. And who made the suggestion to use the land?
They came up at one of our meetings. I believe it was, I presented the solution.
That's what I was getting to, and I had forward knowledge of this, so I just wanted to express my thanks to Captain Bolton for saving us about $300,000 by making a suggestion in a team environment on behalf of the city to cut the cost of the retaining wall. I think that was extraordinary and shows keenness in your leadership.
Any other amplifying questions? Alderman Lopez?
Just to clarify, does this if this is approved and the training facility is built, does it replace the one being used on Pine Street Extension?
That's correct. We no longer use the one at Pine Street Extension. That was done with a land swap with the city, so that has been turned back over to the city.
Anyone else? Thank you. I'll now open up the public hearing on R-24-108 with testimony in favor.
I have some questions. Brett T-Boom, 24 Cheyenne Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire. The assigned fund balance, does that mean The money's been set aside specifically for police facility improvements?
Director Cummings?
Yes.
Okay. Have you gotten a proposal, detailed proposal backing up this number from a contractor ready to do the job?
Director Cummings?
Yes.
Who's the contractor?
Whiting Turner.
So they'll do this job, whatever it is, for $3.5 million. That's a fixed price job?
Director Cummings?
Yes, it's a guaranteed maximum price, and what they would be doing would be under the $3.5 million.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Testimony in favor of R-24-108? Seeing none. Testimony in opposition?
Permit me to get my chart.
I think we've already seen the charts. Unless you have a new one.
I got plenty of charts, Mr. Chair. Just want to remind
That's
you,
the same chart you showed before. It's already been
just
in
to
the-
get it through your head, your supplemental appropriations, 47.4 million. If this is such an important project, why did you not approve this through the budget process? Why are you sneaking it through supplemental project? Opposed?
Any other testimony in opposition? Once again, testimony in favor? And once again, testimony in opposition. All right, I'll close the public hearing on R-24-108 at 7:44. And open up the public hearing on R-24-113 relative to the acceptance of $6 million of anticipated grant funds and to accept and appropriate an additional $1,700,000 of unanticipated grant funds for a lead-based paint hazard reduction grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Director Sullivan?
Good evening, committee members. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director for the City of Nashua. Here on behalf of this piece of legislation, I want to provide a bit of explanation as it's a bit untraditional to see both an anticipated and an unanticipated appropriation for a grant. I just want to provide a bit of explanation behind that. But before I do, this is to support a recently awarded grant by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. If you're not familiar with the city's ongoing lead remediation program, it runs through our Urban Programs Department, and we actually assist with lead paint reduction and removal within residential and particularly rental properties throughout the city of Nashua on a per unit basis. Over our last grant period, which just wrapped up at the end of 2024, we remediated about 210 units, really minimizing the public health impact to particularly children that live in these units across the city. And again, this is a HUD-funded program. This is actually our 7th grant. We received a notice of a successful award from HUD at the end of 2020, or just a few months ago in mid-2024. But something interesting happened. When we had identified this grant within the fiscal 2025 budget, we did not know what level of fiscal constraint would exist around the grant. And as a result, we included $6 million being the total program award within the fiscal 25 budget. Lo and behold, when the notice of funding availability came out through HUD, they actually announced maximum awards of up to $7.7 million. So we applied for the maximum award, and we actually were successful in getting that. So we received an award of $7.7 million, $1.7 million above what we had included in the fiscal 2025 budget. That's why you see an anticipated $6 million and an unanticipated $1.7 million as part of the program. Beyond that, I just say that we're excited to implement this yet again over the next 4-year period. We're scheduled for about 230 units, but we're always hopeful to get more, and happy to answer any questions about the program or the financial structure that the committee may have this evening. Thank you.
The Alderman have any clarifying questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'll open up testimony in favor. Seeing none. Testimony in opposition. Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor. Seeing none, once again, testimony in opposition. Seeing none. So I'll close the public hearing at 7:47 and open up the public hearing on R-24-114 relative to the acceptance and appropriation of unanticipated donation on the field replacement at Sellis Stadium. I don't know if there's anyone here to present it, but it's, or is there? No? So the Stellis family has authorized or has generously giving a donation of $200,000 towards the field replacement at Stellis Stadium. We have to accept that before it can become part of the project. And I think you're going to find a addition to this resolution to not have the total price go up from 1.5 to 1.7. The 200K will be used to offset the 1.5. So are there any amplifying questions I might have missed to clarify? That'll happen during budget, by the way. Okay. So I'll open up testimony in favor. You state name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Cassandra Stellis Malvers. I live at 25 Fairbanks Road in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And I'm here this evening. My sisters and I offered this donation in honor of our father, Jimmy Stellos. Jimmy loved Nashua and was proud of the stadium, which bears our family name. When we learned that the stadium had to be closed this fall due to the surface's need for repair, we wanted to offer the city a gift that we knew Jimmy would approve of. He felt that it was important for the youth of Nashua to have a safe and quality place to play. We knew he would have been distressed to find Stellos Stadium was closed to the children of Nashua. He would have stepped up to help the city restore and repair the stadium. So we offer this gift in that spirit. I encourage you to accept our donation and apply it to the necessary repairs so the stadium can be opened for play once again. Thank you.
Yes, on behalf of the city, we appreciate, thank you for your donation. And just a quick update, the old field is totally removed. The new grading has gone in, the new drainage has gone in. We just found out today we may need some additional drainage work done, but right now the contract calls for the entire field to be totally replaced and usable by December 21st, although I don't imagine we'll use it till spring. But as far as the stadium's concerned, the work is proceeding very smoothly. This time around, there's going to be a rubber padding underneath the field, which make it even more conducive to safe play. So the field is going to be in great shape come spring for all sports. All right, any other testimony in favor? Seeing none, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Again, testimony in favor? Seeing none, and once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. So I'll close the public hearing on R-24-114 at 7:50 PM and open the public hearing on R-24-115 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $5,245,000 of assigned fund balance into various capital improvement projects.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director
And I
Cummings?
just asked that if you could switch the PowerPoint to the third and final slide deck that we have.
Hit escape first. If you, yeah.
All right.
So Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. The way I envision this resolution unfolding this evening is I'll do a quick overview, and then we have the specific divisions or departments here this evening that will speak in detail about the individual expenditure as it's outlined within the resolution. And so, Mr. Chairman, what you see before you are all various expenditures that will have no impact on the tax rate. We are using surplus funding for capital improvement projects. A lot of these projects came about through the ad hoc process that we went through this summer, and this is just us continuing on through that process. And so, just to quickly, before I hand it over to the individual departments, what our 24-115 has in detail is asking for improvement to the 3 swimming pools in the city, of redoing the epoxy floors, looking for Greeley Park improvements for $1.3 million, hydroelectric project design improvements for community development at $500,000, community rail project feasibility study from community development and economic development for $225,000. Nashua Transit System capital match and miscellaneous construction projects through community development for $125,000. Deferred capital maintenance with the fire department for $100,000. Pine Street Station feasibility study and starting the concept design for the fire department at $100,000. IT equipment replacement and upgrades for the police department for $45,000. Deferred capital maintenance study for the schools for $325,000. Hunt building renovation through admin services for $500,000. Chronos time clock upgrades for IT, $150,000. City Hall HVAC buildings and grounds department at $1 million. Spruce Street connector, it's a New Hampshire DOT project through DPW for $500,000 and community development, and Heritage Rail Trail East through DPW and community development. Another New Hampshire Department of Transportation project where we're looking for $300,000 for those projects. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Mark Saunders to step forward and talk through the 2 specific DPW requests at this time.
Okay, and as we go through each one of these, we'll address questions on each one as we go through.
On the first project, the epoxy floors, I'm actually going to have Superintendent Brian Conant speak to it.
Good evening, everyone. Brian Conant, Superintendent of the Parks Department. We have 3 pools throughout the city. I don't know if we can switch this slide, but I'd like to show the condition of the flooring. So, as you can see, there's a lot of trip hazards. There's paint peeling. We think about the pools in season. Some of these are in shower stalls. Floors are wet. So this is going to cover a couple different things. We're going to fix the trip hazards that are on the floor, and I don't know if you know anything about epoxy flooring, but it's going to come with a little bit of grit, so the floors won't be as slippery when they're wet. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any amplifying questions from anyone? Okay, thank you. Next.
Good evening, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. This is Greeley Park, Stonehouse, Wading Pool, and Band Shell. I'll focus on the Stonehouse because it's the lion's share of the funding that we're seeking approval for. To go back in history, in 1908, Johnny Cotton donated $5,000. The city matched that $5,000, and that's how the Stonehouse was constructed in 1911. It was brought to our attention that the roof was becoming in disrepair. There's rot on the rafters. The terracotta tiles are failing in the overall. So we looked at it, and we brought a structural engineer in, and we determined that the roof needed replacement. Along that, we've done the legwork. We were able to get to 100% design submittals for this project, and that would include replacing the roof, stripping everything down, repairing the rafters, the structural decking, replacing those terracotta tiles. On the back, there was an expansion to the bathrooms that was done in about the 50s. That asphalt roof, that has also failed. So look to replace that with an upgraded and metal roof. In conjunction with that, we're also looking to demolition and replace the bathrooms that were added. We're looking to replace the concrete floor and fixtures, windows, doors, add ventilation, update the necessary electrical and life safety, fire alarms, through there. And in addition to this, the floor of the stone house is actually cracked. It's tripping hazards. None of it's ADA compliant as it sits, so we'll look to peel up that floor, replace that in kind. Everything we're looking to do is in line with the Secretary of Interior standards for treatment of historical properties. And this project is ready to go. We have the design plans in hand, and if the funding is approved, we'll seek a bid for this project. Happy to answer any questions.
Any amplifying questions for anyone on the board? Alderman, Director, yeah, Alderman Moran?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just curious, why can't we just level it and put 2 bathrooms there or something? Are we tied to historic whatever agreements?
So this does have historical significance. It is not on the National Register. It could be eligible for the National Register. I know there's a Greeley Park Advisory Committee that would probably be dead against leveling the stone house and end bathrooms. It's a 110-year-old structure that means a lot to the city, and we're looking to preserve it and keep it the way it is.
Oh,
All set?
yes, but so you're saying that it could be leveled?
I think if there's the proper channels that you would have to seek approvals for, there might be an opportunity to raise it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other amplifying questions? Okay, anything else? All right, so we're all set on those questions. Now, Director Sullivan.
Appreciate the introductory slide the Director Cummings provided here. That's lovely. Good evening, Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. If we are able to advance, I'll jump right into a project that I think everyone is familiar with. This has been substantial subject of discussion at the capital process. But we've broken this project apart a bit. If you recall, we presented a project that cost between $7 and $7.5 million for an upgrade to the fish passage facilities at both the Jackson and the Mine Falls hydroelectric facilities. The Jackson facility is currently being upgraded, but through the licensing process, we're required by FERC and the fish passage agencies to make some improvements to the systems that exist there. Hard to tell what you're looking at here, but we have a ladder system at the Mine Falls system, which is on the left. That's not currently compliant, and on the right is our fish passage ladder structure at the Jackson Mills facility. The agencies essentially use these relicensing processes that we're required to do as an opportunity to sort of take their pound of flesh and ask for improvements that need to be done, and so that's what's happening here. When I refer to breaking apart, what we've done in the interest of identifying a more honed and accurate cost number and project scope is that we're requesting $500,000 now rather than asking for the full bonded amount, so that we can get the project to a point of near 100% design, coordinate with the appropriate agencies, and have a very accurate number before coming forward with an actual request. It's possible that this number could be lower than the $7 million that was initially contemplated at the Capital Committee, but there again, the very reason that we're asking to do the design work now, engage with a consultant and identify an accurate cost estimate for the work before requesting the bonding. So that's our first project in community development within sustainability. And just a refresher, these are the details. It's a little difficult to read, but this is what we estimate the actual cost to be based on our current preliminary cost estimate, but we can move on. The second project is what we're referring to as Step 1, Task 2 for the commuter rail extension project. To catch us all up, we are pursuing with a Nashua First alternative. We have, for the time being, excluded the Manchester extension and are focusing on the 13.3 miles between Crown Street and the lower Lowell Gallagher terminal. For those that may not have caught the infrastructure meeting several months ago, we've received very positive indication from the MBTA about a couple things: the layover facility, where this project stands as a priority within their expansion capital planning efforts. And so we're hoping to build upon that momentum and really bring forward 3 specific pieces in this Step 1, Task 2 work in which there's already, we've already had some discussions about funding this in the past. The 3 steps are a new ridership forecast that we'll actually bring to discussions with DOT and MBTA. Within the current FTA guidelines, the work that was done for NHDOT is now outdated, and so we have to update the ridership forecast in order to build the ridership case. We'd also get a new rough magnitude of capital costs for the overall build-out for the 13.3 mile segment between these communities. And then we would have an update to the O&M costs. Obviously, one thing that's clear here is the project being smaller without the Manchester extension, O&M costs are substantially less. We have fewer stations that are contemplated, and so we need to get accurate cost estimates for all of those things. I want to be really clear, and I know we want to move on to the next slide, and I'm supposed to be quick, but this is one of these, another no-go decision in this project. I think what we're trying to do is identify what the business case could be for this program, recognizing that at any point in time, this Board of Aldermen may choose not to proceed, but it's certainly my perspective and the perspective of Director Hannum and others who have worked on this project that this piece that was contemplated a year ago must be done before we make a true decision about whether to proceed with the project. And then lastly, you may be aware that within the fiscal year budget, we fund the NTS, Nashua Transit Center operations. And the way that most of our funding is done is that we receive significant federal funding and then we match it with local dollars. The way that we pursue capital monies, whether that's for bus replacement or things like replacing seats or bus stops or even work at our existing facilities, we typically pursue those match monies through the supplemental appropriation process after the budget year. This year, we're requesting $125,000 in capital matching funds for really two purposes, although those are sort of broad buckets. One is to supplement the existing technology grant implementation that we're doing right now. We're in the process of rolling out new fixed route and ADA paratransit softwares that will enhance scheduling and efficiency across the entire system, while also providing riders with more accessible data about bus arrival, departure, et cetera. But then the other project is actually, I've talked recently about vehicles being added to our fleet and replacing vehicles that are aged, that are critical for backup. This is actually matching funds to meet both FTA dollars that have been committed to the project and state of New Hampshire fiscal dollars that have been committed to overhauling 3 buses within our fleet. Our piece that we're left with is about $20,000 per vehicle. That's why there's a $65,000 request to get these matching dollars at the local level to buy those or to overhaul those 3 buses in our fleet. And that concludes the community development projects.
Any questions, clarifying questions from the board on any of these? Alderman Warren?
I feel so terrible. I just want to also clarify my previous statements weren't saying tear down the Greeley Park thing. I'm just asking a clarifying question, same as I'm doing here, because I'm sure it'll be framed as Alderman Moran hates rail, which I don't. But I actually really think rail is a good idea. So I'm going to say that first this time before I'm in the newspaper. But realistically, clarifying question, given the who controls the state for the next 2 years who are not supportive of rail, is it something that we would need to get a state approval for to move any of this forward beyond this, to go to the next stage, to actually build the rail? Is anything contingent on the state saying, yeah, we're okay with Massachusetts sending their rail in?
If I may.
Director Sullivan?
Absolutely not. Not only do we not need the state's cooperation, and I don't want to make headlines by suggesting the state is not cooperative, but we don't need their cooperation right now to continue this work that needs to be done with either this work that is contemplated here or future design work that might be needed to get to 30% design. We can go that alone as a city if we so choose. But what I would also just add briefly is that this project is long enough term to bring it to fruition that when we're talking about the state's participation, we're not actually talking about them participating now. We need state participation both in New Hampshire and Massachusetts if we choose to advance this in 2 years or 4 years. This project will not be built over the next 2 years. I'll admit that here. But we're really positioning ourselves for success in perhaps a new administration at the state level. That's why continuing this momentum and sort of walking through these design checkboxes is really, really important to not keep moving.
Great. Thank you. No, I appreciate that response. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have Chief Buxton with us relative to the specific fire items. I'm going to just quickly take a liberty to talk a little bit about the Pine Hill Station upgrades, which is us starting a feasibility and concept drawings. If you recall during the ad hoc process, and hydroelectric fish passage is also a similar type project, where we very clearly said as a community we wanted to start using cash to design projects get it to a certain level before we actually come before you for bond authorization requests. And so this is what Pine Hill Station is trying to do as well. What we're looking for now is a small amount of seed money to study what would ultimately be Pine Hill Station upgrades and potentially a replacement of that fire station. It's long overdue, and so we would look to start the early concept design of that. Now, if anyone is familiar with that particular site, it's complicated by some land issues, and we would look to bring in the planning department as well to talk through how we might be able to put this particular project in a place for it to be successful, for it to receive authorization for construction. And so I added this $100,000 to this because I believe this will be a high priority for the fire department as the years go on, and this would be the start of them working towards a capital improvement project. With that being said, I'll hand it over to the chief to add on any details he'd like there or to talk about the deferred capital maintenance.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Steve Buxton, Nashua Fire. So I'd like to start by addressing the deferred capital maintenance $100,000 request. When we submitted our capital improvements program for the fire department, our original request was for $175,000 because we do have a lot of deferred maintenance issues and tend to go through that money. We received we received $50,000 in that line during the budget season. The request for the additional $100,000 is to assist us in maintenance mostly of our HVAC systems. As many of you are aware, we're currently working with a company through a facility study. They'll assist us in developing a plan to prioritize our deferred maintenance needs moving forward. One thing that is abundantly clear to them and us is that we've been battling this issue with our HVAC systems for many years, and a lot of them are at end of life. This line in our budget quickly goes into the negative each and every year, despite our efforts with preventive maintenance programs, contracts, and increases in this budget line. As of today, our budget line of $75,000 for HVAC is currently about to go underwater, and we're about halfway through the year. We have projects in this area at several of our stations that we're currently waiting funding to be able to move forward until we can see the final recommendations from the facility study program to prioritize. I think the only thing I would like to add to Director Cummings' comments regarding the Station 5 upgrade, potential replacement. The facility study, initial look at our buildings and stuff, has stated that that building on that site at this point in time will not support the expansion that we need to take place. Many of you may remember we did a master plan study in 2021. It calls for increased coverage out in the Northwest District. This coupled within the fire department a need to lighten the load of the actual structure of the Amherst Street Fire Station because of the size of apparatus we now park inside there. Will call for the station that we would put on Pine Hill Road to be what we call a double company fire station. So that'd be two pieces of apparatus that would allow us to increase the coverage out in that district while at the same time alleviating some of our problems at 15 Amherst Street. The early information coming back from the facility study doesn't believe that expansion of the current site would be very cost effective for the city. And the premise would be to build a multiple company facility and perhaps pull other stakeholders such as emergency management to the table. The city currently doesn't have a truly dedicated EOC for the emergency management department, so our thoughts are to pull them to the table and maybe at the same time make a spot for them up there. That's all I have on that, and I can...
Any amplifying questions?
Just one.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, Chief, it might help the fellow alderman, having worked there like you did. The date of construction of that vehicle, that building at the airport was 1960, correct? And it was probably built to have probably a 10 to under 20 years life expectancy. I think we're well beyond that.
Yeah, the building itself is certainly not built for a modern fire department that we currently have. It's built for a single fire company, and the number of people and responses that we do within that building at this point in time far exceed its capabilities. While the structure itself, now, not the systems inside, are pretty much bomb-proof, the systems have certainly run their course and are at end of life.
Okay. All set? Yes.
I'm just
Thibodeau?
curious,
Go ahead.
would this be the primary responding station for like the new Mohawk Tannery apartment complex, or the new one that's gonna be coming down by the smokestack? Would that be the responding fire
Chief?
station?
It would be one of the responding, not the primary. With the Veterans Memorial Parkway, it would certainly be a close run, but Amherst Street would most likely be what we would refer to as the first two companies into that area.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. Next, we have Captain Bolton with us, and I'd ask him to join up here. Deputy Chief Fay sent me some points that he asked that I make explicit. If there are questions that arise, I hope between Captain Bolton and myself, we can address them. But essentially, there's two pieces of equipment that are IT related that are looking to be replaced: a phone logger and a camera replacement system. The phone logger is over 7 years old. It's a critical system to retain the 911 service. Both the phone logger is at its end of life, and the support for it is at end of life. It does not comply with CGIS protocols and policies at this point, which is very important for us to maintain. And so we're looking for the phone logger to be replaced. And then in addition, we're looking for a camera replacement. There have been multiple hardware failures. The viewing and screen and imagery on the camera is hazy at this point and not entirely effective. There have been shortages relative to storage issues, and there has been trouble relative to recording, and we're having difficulty seeing certain aspects of the site. I'll leave my comments there and turn it over to Captain Bolton if he'd like to add anything.
Yeah, Bolton?
Sure. Tom Bolton, Captain, Nashville Police. In reference to the phone logger system, what happens when someone calls 911 is it gets recorded, and that information can be used in a variety of circumstances, whether it be to replay in the moment, to be able to capture information, because occasionally someone may disconnect from us, and we have to go back and replay that information to be able to ascertain a person's address or information relevant to a call, or later on down the line where we may have to be, it may be information that could be used to substantiate some form of crime or other form of law enforcement means. The current system is aging to where it is starting to fail, and that becomes a problem for record keeping. The National Police Department is very good at keeping records. It's one of our primary responsibilities. And in keeping that secure, we cannot have obstructions within the data network. And so as the system ages, where the CGIS comes into play with this, CGIS is a government requirement relative to how we store and manage our data. And as any a piece of technology starts to age and not become supported, it starts to lose its ability to become secure. And we've seen time and time again where bad actors will come in and hack into the data and improperly use that. And that's certainly not something that you want to see here, particularly with a system that's no longer being supported. Relative to the camera replacement, this comes into the security and oversight for the organization. And the cameras that we have are aged. There are much better systems that are out there. We do not have a full view of our premises. And so again, relative to that, it's certainly a system that is well beyond its usable life.
Okay, any clarifying questions?
Just one. Captain, working with you on the project of the new training facility, and you mentioned the camera, and I'm just kind of walking down. will that system be add on the training facility too?
Part of the project for Nine Riverside has its own standalone system. Ideally, the two systems will be the same. However, we're talking right now for the main property of NPD, not the Nine Riverside property. So we're two separate projects relative to that, but the systems we are looking for Nine Riverside is ideally something that we would also like to include within the 28 Officer James Roach Drive property.
Thank you.
All set? Alderman Jettie?
I'm embarrassed to ask this question, but you used the term CGIS, and Director Cummings said CGIS. What does that mean?
Criminal Justice Information System. Again, it's a system that's overseen by the FBI that is relative to how we store and manage all of our data and how we release the data within the organization. So it largely relates to release of records and how we store records. I can give you an example of that. Any person that comes into the National Police Department, whether it be a vendor or contractor, or certainly any other employee that comes in, they have to sign off on, or they have to go through a training, a PowerPoint, and sign off an acknowledgement that if they walk into the National Police Department and they're to inadvertently see a piece of, say, criminal person's criminal history or some other compromising information, that they wouldn't release that information. The same thing applies to how we store that information within the organization, where we have to have certain firewalls in place, we have to have certain security that's brought up to a level that prevents people that come in and take that information in and properly use that, all of which again is mandated by the federal government.
Thank you.
All right, all set? Alderman Lopez?
So assuming the website goes back up, is the call logger that you're doing going to restore the capability to post at least general call information for the public, or no?
That's now talking about two separate systems. The call log itself is generated through our records management system. The records management system populates into or had populated into the website. This is relative to voice calls within the police department. So you call 911, it gets recorded like an old answering machine would, and allows us to go back and be able to replay that information and store that information through a voice call, not through a data call that's entered in.
Okay, so it's a digital mailbox.
Correct.
Okay.
All set? Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. Next item is $325,000 for schools. I believe the superintendent is here along with the plan ops.
Testimony.
Not yet. This is
Oh,
still under
still
the same one.
part of it? Okay. I'm just keeping an eye,
Yeah,
sorry.
all right.
And
Dr. Andre?
I hand it off to the superintendent.
Thank you, Director Cummins. We're here to speak a little bit about the deferred capital maintenance study. As you know, we have 19 school buildings, a little more than $13 million in deferred maintenance. And a lot of conversations come up on how we decide what's our next kind of projects. Annually, Director Smith will present to the Board of Education upcoming projects for this upcoming year, but also as far out as 50 years. That being said, it's very informal. I have a lot of trust in Director Smith on prioritizing what projects are coming forward, but through our Board of Education and also at the JSSBC, there are a lot of questions on prioritizing and really formalizing the system. This study will allow us to actually review and analyze the school assets and facilities. I can let Mr. Smith talk a little more about what is in the RFP and what would be entailed in the study.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Sean Smith, Plant Operations Director. Dr. Andrade pretty much covered everything. We want to do a facility master plan. something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. It will allow us to do a condition assessment for all the schools. It will potentially help us with some spatialization issues, and finally help us develop that long-range plan and where to put your facilities in the both the capital and the deferred maintenance planning cycles. I think it's well worth the money, and it's something the fire department recently did. It's a good idea.
Right, we've had questions over the years about what do we tackle next, and this looks at all the schools in the city and gives you an idea of where they stand relative to what needs to be done next, and it gives you a document which you can plan for future maintenance and deferred maintenance. Questions, amplifying questions? All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, next we have Amy DeRoche, who would speak about Hunt Building renovations, Nick Misevich, who would speak about Kronos time clock upgrades, and then Jen DeShays, who would speak about City Hall HVAC upgrades as necessary.
Good evening, Amy DeRoche from Administrative Services. The request tonight will help round out the project to replace the tower windows in the Hunt Memorial Building. We've been in front of you, I think, several times now and explained the project. We are at 100% design on this project. We are all set to, we've already been out to bid. We have a contractor lined up if this money gets approved, and we would be ready to just sort of pull the trigger. It does take 6 months for the windows to be ordered, so we have a kind of a long lead time to get through before the rain comes in the spring. And so we're hoping that you favorably approve this evening, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on the Hunt Building? Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, Mr. Roja, thank you for mentioning the rain. I mean, this is another one of the infrastructure cans that get kicked down the road. Those windows didn't fail overnight. And now it's almost like destroying the building when that water comes down the windows. Am I correct in assuming that?
That is very correct. And
So it's high time, if we love the Hunt Building, to which I do, we got to give it a little TLC. Thank you.
If I could add to, if the money is not approved this time around, we would be in risk of losing our grant that we received for $485,000. So we would hate to have to return that money for this project.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay.
If I could ask Nick Misevich to join us to speak to the Kronos time clocks.
Nick Misevich, Chief Information Officer for the City of Nashua. These time clocks are an integral part of timekeeping throughout the city. They are located in all city buildings and in each school building as well. We are at the point where the time clocks we currently have are end of life and will not be supported in the next version of the Kronos software. So we would have to replace every time clock. There's 42 of them throughout the city, and then make plans to upgrade the Kronos software in that order.
All right, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, Mr. Chairman, we have Jen DeShays with us this evening that can talk about the HVAC improvements necessary for City Hall.
Thank you. Jennifer DeShays, Risk Management. This project would eliminate the 2 natural gas-fired steam boilers in the dated air conditioning units in portions of our building. The design's a combination of energy-efficient electric reheats in the ductwork and heat pumps that will condition spaces with both heating and cooling. Approximately 60% of our HVAC system was upgraded in 2011 at a cost just over $1 million. This upgrade will replace the remaining 40% of the building that is on steam and near end of life, if not already. this project is critical. One of the steam boilers that one of the 2 steam boilers is no longer working, so we don't have a backup to an already aged system. The steam distribution piping is original to the building, and we're starting to see pinholes in multiple pipes that we've repaired over the last couple of years. Parts are getting harder and harder to find, and if our remaining boiler goes down, we'll have 40% of our building that has no heat, thus we'll probably have to shut the building down.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Next, Ms. Chairman, I'm going to ask Mark Saunders from DPW to join us again, but this next 2 projects are community development projects in conjunction with DPW, and I believe Mark Sanders is going to speak to them at present.
Good evening, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. So the, next slide, yep. So this project is the Spruce Street Connector. In 2020, we were awarded a transportation alternative grant, and the grant envisions to construct a 10-foot wide multi-use path that would lead from the proposed Heritage Rail Trail along Spruce Street, along the railroad corridor, and connect the Heritage Rail Trail to the National River Walk. This project is just getting underway. We're planning to start preliminary engineering in '25. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions? Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, what is the impediment? Now, I worked at the new Crown Hill Station. I think Chief Buxton would allow people to still walk the tracks, to get down by there. I used to like going back there and picking up coal from the old days, so anybody needs coal at this time of year for the kids, let me know. But the thing is, why are we out in the street and not in what was the former rail?
So the next project that's going to be presented is the Heritage Rail Trail. That project is well underway. That's under design. That's going to final design. So that's the one that would go behind the fire station over the Commercial Street Bridge from Main Street to Denton Street. That's the next project that's going to be presented. This is a leg off of that. So this comes in at Spruce Street, right where Wendy's is at I believe Howard Street, and this is going to connect north towards the Riverwalk. That's what this project is.
Right, because, follow up if I may.
Follow up?
There should be with the rail, no eminent domain, because that was owned by the state.
Yep.
So we just take over from what the state has.
And that will be the next project that I present.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on this particular project? Next.
So the next project that I just alluded to is the Heritage Rail Trail East. This is going to go from Main Street to Denton Street. That's right behind the Henry Hangar Building. I would like to circle back, and this funding we're looking for, this is the match funding to the grants that we were awarded. It is an 80-20 split. 20% is the city share, 80% is the federal share. All these are passed through New Hampshire DOT. This project is very similar to the one I just spoke of, as it is a 10-foot wide multi-use pass. This is very similar to the Rail Trail West that is already built, already in use along the West Hollis corridor. And with that, I'll happily answer any other questions on this project.
Any amplifying questions? Seeing none, thanks.
Thank you.
Director Cummings?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that brings us to a conclusion relative to R-24-115. I think what we learned this evening is all these initiatives or projects are imminent, and so I'd ask for your favorable consideration for these efforts and projects so they can get underway.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a clarifying question for the overall resolution?
Sure.
Thank you. Director Cummings, why do we put all these into one resolution? Why weren't they broken out and just jammed into one big omnibus, however it's phrased? I feel like it's the federal government.
Director Cummings?
As I thought through a pathway forward, I just conceived it as a way to try to be able to bundle everything all together, knowing that everyone would have an opportunity to speak to these individual lines and make adjustments as necessary, if that's so your desire. As a matter of best practice, in all the other municipalities I've worked in, this is typically how they would approach such an effort. So, these are all capital improvement projects. These are all using an identified same funding source. And they're itemized, and we went through them one by one, and we could absolutely address them one by one during the budget committee process, if that's so your desire.
Follow up.
Yes.
Yes, I'm not on budget, so I don't have a ability to make those motions, and so I just would have to bring them to the full board and be critiqued for not doing the work at the committee, even though I don't have a vote at the committee. Thank
Alderman
you,
Lopez, are you all set?
Yes.
Alderman Lopez?
Just a question to Corporation Counsel. If hypothetically Alderman Moran decides to obliterate the famous bathrooms of Greeley, that changes the resolution, right? So then would have to go back to public hearing? And I only say hypothetically as an example.
Bernie?
I'm going to say you've had and will have, presumably, a presentation and then public hearing, providing the public the opportunity to address each of them, pro or con. Depending on the substance of any proposed amendment, if you wanted to eliminate a whole project, I think that you could probably do. If you wanted to allocate more money to one and take out some of the money from another, that may present more of an issue that would require another public hearing. So any proposed amendment would have to be analyzed individually.
All set, or follow-up?
So my question that's what I always get worried about, is the potential understanding that, if we change it, we have to go back and have the public hearing, then back to the regular board. But I'm hearing that it's based on the amendment if and it passes.
That would be true whether it was in one resolution or 10 separate resolutions.
Same process.
Same
Alderman
process.
Moran?
So there wouldn't be, if something changed and the budget committee or the full board whacked out something that didn't need a further public hearing, we'd be able to potentially consult with you at that time, at the full BOA, to get a better sense.
I don't miss many.
All right. Well, I feel comfortable with that safety net and your legal advice.
Any other questions? All right. I'll now open up testimony in favor of R-24-115.
I'm not here at this point to state in favor or opposition. I have some questions. Director Pellins, can you push up the list of the projects? I lost track of them, frankly. Yeah. Yeah, one slide or two slides? Two slides, all right. Okay, we have in the city a process called capital improvement ratings. Can you tell me, the city, which of these projects on both of these spreadsheets received AAA rating by the Capital Improvements Project Committee? AAA.
Director Cummings?
I couldn't at this time.
We have in process in the city a process called Capital Improvements Projects Committee. How can you propose projects that haven't even got a rating? Have they got any rating?
Alderman, Director Cummings?
Yes, they have.
Can you tell me for each of these what the ratings have been? Can you itemize each one of them?
Director Cummings?
There's a capital improvement committee report that he could go look at to find the individual ratings. They're all there. I don't know them off the top of my head. The only qualifier I would say is the police equipment I don't believe did receive a rating. That's because it fell under that threshold where it would be required.
Well, as an example, epoxy floors for swimming pools, that got a rating?
Yes.
But you don't know what it is. The Greeley Park improvement has a rating, but you don't know what it is, 1.3 million. How can you come before this board and propose if you don't know the ratings? We have a project in place in the charter, not just in ordinances. So first of all, take this whole thing back. That's my first comment. Second of all, any of these projects, okay, tell me which ones are ready to go in the contract. And you can itemize each one of them if you want to.
Director Cummings?
I mean, I would have to follow up with that response. I couldn't do that this evening.
You're not prepared to present this project. Let me remind you, Mr. Cummings, since you made a comment about how great this design process works. When you were Economic Development Director, you presented a project priced at $15 million for an item called Performance Arts Center. It went through a design process and a study and details that wound up costing the city $25 million. And according to Ortolano, who did some studies looking at the oddities about this tax credits, $35 million. So this design process is very much in question unless you have a proposal with a contractor ready to go. Then you should bond this stuff. And this would especially apply to this coterie of projects. Now, on the individual projects, as an example, that dam, I don't know why the city ever bought this dam. It's been a money loot. Are we making any money with this dam?
Director Cummings?
That is my understanding.
Do you know how much?
I don't off the top of my head.
Well, how much money do you want to fix it this time?
500,000.
500,000. And not long ago, it was a couple of million. Get rid of that project. Sell it. You got stuck by a contractor that never performed on the dam. And believe me, I've never seen a profit and loss statement on the city. Get rid of it. The Hunt building. I was here when we bought it years and years ago. It's been a money loser ever since. Leaking roofs, leaking foundations, God knows what else. Commuter rail. Who in the hell at this point wants commuter rail? The state doesn't want it. The director says, well, we're going to be on our own. What are you going to do? Put a station here, station there, and run a commuter rail to the
Mr.
city of
Teboom, do you
Nashua?
have direct questions? You said you
That
had
is a direct
questions.
point.
That's not a question.
Why are we doing commuter rail, Mr. Cummings?
Director Cummings?
I'm sorry, the question is why are we doing commuter rail?
Yes. It's this project, this study.
This is something that's been discussed along the way at various aldermanic committee meetings. It is my understanding that we have always endeavored to try to have passenger rail here in southern New Hampshire. Understanding the constraints and the obstacles at hand, a year or two back, it was decided for us to look at taking a Nashua First approach. This is just a continuation of a project that's been going on where we are studying the feasibility of trying to bring passenger rail to Nashua, which has over the years shown to be something that is a high priority that the residents of Nashua have asked for. And so we are not prepared yet to make a final assessment. We don't have all the data. That's what this feasibility assessment is trying to do, is give us enough data so those of you may be able to elect to continue on, or leave it be until a future time.
Why was it necessary to bring this in on the supplemental appropriations? Why wasn't it made part of the annual budget?
Director Cummings?
So this is a one-time cost where we're looking to use surplus funds. It is completely appropriate way to try to fund a project. If you are not going to use your operating budget process, this is an alternative methodology to be able to fund a project.
That brings up a point about assigned balance. Is this a S-code? Are this S-code money?
No.
Then how can it be surplus? ESCO money is surplus money.
This is surplus money that we're using assigned fund balance to pay for. It's not quote-unquote escrow, it's additional unspent appropriations.
It's a fund balance account. It sits in a separate savings account as opposed to an unassigned balance account. It is not surplus. It's a savings account. I don't know. Why do you have to bring a time clock upgrade on the supplemental appropriations?
That is a time-sensitive initiative. If we are not able to get that done in a relatively short order, we won't be able to service our existing time clocks.
And what does that mean?
Well,
What does that mean? You can't get paid? No payroll?
That could be a potential outcome, or we wouldn't be able to accurately track employees' time.
This is, of all the millions of dollars in this supplemental appropriation proposal, this is probably the wackiest. And one good question, one of the aldermen finally asked, why is it all bundled together? Let me remind you, it takes 2/3 vote at the board to pass this. If you don't get 2/3 vote, it fails, right? Supplemental appropriation. Why would you bundle all this stuff together? Commuter rail, time clocks, home building. Why not separate it out? And I guess the answer was, it's how other communities do it.
You all said, former Alderman T. Boone?
Yes.
All right, and I'll accept testimony in favor of R 24-115. Seeing none, testimony in opposition to R 24-115.
Well, you heard the projects. You see there's no rating presented to you, which is the first thing you ought to ask for. Second of all, not all these are design processed, ready to go in the contract. Commuter rail is a good example. It's a study. These things are brought under $47.4 million of supplemental appropriations. In the past, there was maybe at most $1 million of supplemental appropriations. This is the kind of madness that should be stopped. Much opposed.
Any other testimony in opposition? Oh, Director Cummings?
I just want to clarify for the record, this is for $5.2 million, not $40 million. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other testimony in opposition? Seeing none, additional testimony once again in favor? Seeing none, once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. I'll close the public hearing on R 24-115 at 8:45. And open the public hearing on R 24-116 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $800,000 of assigned fund balance in the Department of 128 Risk Management, account 89650, transfer to Property and Casualty Self-Insurance Fund for the purpose of rebuilding a fire truck.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have the fire chief with us this evening, along with our risk manager and assistant risk manager. I'd ask that they come up, but essentially what we're looking for is to replace a fire truck that had an unfortunate accident earlier this year. We have a quote in hand. We'd like to proceed, and we're looking to be able to transfer monies into the risk budget so we can proceed with the repair and rebuild of the fire truck.
Chief?
Good evening, Steve Buxton, Nashua Fire. As I reported to you previously at a meeting, back in March of 2024, we had an incident with one of our ladder trucks down at the Spitbrook Road Fire Station while doing daily apparatus checks and extending the aerial device. The aerial came in close proximity to the primary wires. The power arced from the wires to the aerial device. Due to the actions of the operator on the truck at the time, no injuries took place or occurred. However, significant damage to the apparatus did occur. You should know ladder 3 is a 2021 Pierce aerial. It's a 105-foot ladder that is assigned to Station 3. When we purchased the truck in 2021, it was approximately $1.4 million. If we were to buy a brand-new truck today, it would be better than $2 million to replace that. An additional fact is that the build times for brand-new apparatus for aerial devices are now at 52 months. This truck can be rebuilt. We have shipped it, we've been working with risk management through the process. We shipped the truck out to Appleton, Wisconsin to be evaluated. They do have a process they can put it through to rebuild the truck completely. And once we get the clearance to move forward on that build time, if we gave them the go-ahead, say in December, we would probably have it back to us by late spring, early summer timeframe. So that would be my recommendation with your support.
Any amplifying questions? No? Thanks. I think you gave us a detailed presentation in your previous meeting, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Close the meeting.
On R-24-116, I'll open it up for testimony in favor.
I have no questions in favor of Fred T-Boom, 24 Cheyenne. I have a couple of questions. This is self-insurance fund. Why is this truck not insured?
Director Cummings?
Yes, it's my understanding the truck is insured.
We have an $800, $1,000 deductible?
It's my understanding that in the aggregate, we would receive about $100,000. And that is what we have it insured for, and so that's what we would be looking to receive.
How much is the truck worth? It was a new truck?
As I understand it, a couple of years ago, it was a couple $1 million.
So why do we only insure it for a couple of $1 million truck for $100,000?
Do you want Risk can answer that? If you'd step aside for a minute.
Sure.
So we're currently self-insured for $100,000 on all our motor vehicle first-party property. We're then commercially insured for another $100,000. Thereafter, after that $100,000, we're back to self-insurance. And so our program is basically a balance of both insurance and commercial insurance. Our loss history, trends throughout the U.S., upticks, they're all considered when you insure a vehicle. Weighing the cost of insurance, the severity and the frequency of a loss is also considered, which is partially driven by a soft and a hard market. The city of Nashua has never had a loss that's pierced our self-insurance as it relates to motor vehicle liability, motor vehicle property, my apologies. So we've never had to entertain that next level. It's cost prohibitive to start insuring everything the city owns. You really have to look at the severity and the frequency of the matter at hand. And that is not something we currently have. This is the first loss we've ever had. As I said, above the 100,000 self-insurance.
Yep, that's another question. So, we get paid 100,000, which is the maximum reimbursable. We have to pay 800,000. Was this truck lost because of the fault of the driver in the fire department?
No.
No.
So why do we, city, try to get the $800,000 for whoever caused the loss?
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Director Cummings?
I mean, that's something that we could look at doing, and that is probably a future conversation to be had. I'll leave it to Chief Buxton to speak to the details, but as I understand it, after this loss occurred, there was an internal investigation done and a study, and essentially, based on those findings, you know, we're proceeding right now, because ultimately, what we shouldn't get lost is we need to have this fire truck back in operation. And that is what we're trying to do right now. We do not want to go any longer without having this level of service for our community. Secondly, from that, there should be these additional questions that are being raised and have answers to them, but they're separate and apart from the conversation at hand tonight.
So you're trying to recuperate $800,000 from another party? You proceeding with that?
That may be on the scope of what we're talking
No,
about
it's in
tonight.
the scope because you're asking the taxpayers to pay $800,000. It's certainly in the scope to find out if you're going to try to recoup this money.
The question is that we need to get the truck repaired quickly so we have the fire protection that we need in the city. And if there is any type of other recovery of any monies, it'll be after the fact and reduce the money that the city spends.
That's my question. Is there an attempt being made? Is there a lawsuit being filed against the party that caused this accident?
I don't think anyone here is aware of whether one
attorney
has
can
or hasn't been
answer that.
filed.
I can answer something on that, if you want.
The mayor?
Mayor can answer.
This wasn't a vehicle accident. It was down at Spitbrook Road in a very humid type of atmosphere, and the ladder truck was backing out, and the chief can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but, or if any of the details are incorrect, but the ladder truck was backing out of the station, and electricity arced from the power line across, you know, an open space to the ladder, and it burned the truck out. So if we could somehow say that Eversource was negligent, certainly there would be a lawsuit, but this may be just, you know, an act of God, an accident that really has no party at fault.
Okay, so the city's...
It's like lightning struck or something, you know, it happened, and it's unusual, it's never arced before, the driver was using the same procedure that he always uses. It was, I think, kind of a misty, humid day, but the chief can correct me if I'm not right about that, but it was, you know, an unusual, never occurred before situation that burned the truck.
Okay, so Mayor, have you, just look at the $800,000 in the answers by the first manager.
Yeah.
Are you reviewing in your department this $100,000 maximum liability?
But I think you're missing the point of what Ms. Deshay said. Over the long term, the city saves millions of dollars as a result of being self-insured, because we don't have to pay for insurance, we don't have to pay an insurance company, the overage, the profit, everything else that it would take to get insurance policies on all these vehicles. as she said, the cost would, on an annual basis, would be cost prohibitive. Okay, so after all of these years, having saved many, many millions of dollars, there's a loss of 800,000. And the city has to pay for it. But had we been purchasing the insurance that you're advocating for the last 20 or 30 years, we'd probably be out God knows how many millions of dollars. Yes, today we would recover 800,000, but we would have spent millions and millions of dollars in the interim with no recovery.
Okay, so the short answer is yes, it's the $100,000 maximum liability tax.
The answer
thing
is yes,
cost
but
effective.
you were questioning
That's all I'm
the
asking.
rationality and the logic of what was done, and I'm just explaining what it was.
Thank you.
Testimony in favor? Seeing none, testimony in opposition? Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor? And once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. I'll close the public hearing on R 24-116 at 8:57. And we're going to adjourn this meeting, and the budget meeting will start 5 minutes later. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I motion that the November 25th, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen so be adjourned.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. 8:57. All right, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's November 25th, 2024. We're in the Aldermatic Chamber, and it's 9:04 PM. Would the clerk please call the roll?
What I'm afraid is it's going to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing, and it's going to delay things. But you do
Alderman
what you want.
Senate,
Here's, I just provide advice.
Alderman Derek Teeble,
Here. That's my advice.
Alderman Sullivan,
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly is missing, Alderman at large, Laurie Wilshire,
Here.
Alderman Michael O'Brien Senior is present, and Chairman Richard A. Dowd.
Present.
Okay, also we have Aldermans Clee and Alderman Jettie. And did I get everybody? Okay, also in attendance, Mr. Chairman, is Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director, Jill Stanfield, Parking Manager, Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste, but I don't think he made this meeting. We have, yeah, for the police, we don't have Chief Roach.
No,
We have
Bolton.
Captain Bolton.
You're not required to do all this.
And many others.
Yeah.
You can write them down
Yeah,
separately.
Matt Sullivan and Steve Buxton, Fire Chief, Corporate Counsel, Steve Bolton, and a cast of thousands.
All right, first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to provide public comment on anything being acted upon on the agenda this evening? Seeing none. Communications?
There is one from Lisa M. Photo, Director of Public Works, referrals from the Board of Aldermen to resolutions.
Waive the reading and place it on file.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's another communication to the Board of Aldermen from Donna Graham, Legislative Assistant. Is that the one from Lisa? Authorize the, on R-24-107, for the compactor refuge trucks, the DPW provided positive comment.
No, Mr. Chairman, that isn't on my, but we
It's the
should
same one.
approve it. Okay. Oh, it's not on my agenda?
It's the same one.
Same one.
Same one?
All right, unfinished business?
There is none.
None. New business resolutions. First one.
Before us
Go
this
ahead.
evening is R-24-106, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $15 million for renovations to 2 parking garages. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R-24-106, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $15 million for renovation to parking garages. Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as we heard in the public hearings, we had a former alderman, talk about why we're doing these things and why we're trying to sneak this in. I just want to say that when Stellos didn't get done before or off-season, we caught the heat as well, I'm sure, the school board and the school administration. So now we're trying to get to something ahead of time so we don't have accidents. And I have kids that play sports. Losing that stadium, I'm sure, was awful. I get it. Garage collapsing, going to be a lot more detrimental. So to kick it down the road another year is just not what we should be doing here if we really care about the citizens that use that garage. I hate to break it to the former alderman, but he was not, their administrations prior to us did not have any plan for infrastructure of this city. This is why we got buildings that are falling apart, we got the Hunt building, we got other buildings, we got the HVAC. No one ever put in a plan for how we're going to fix these things 20 years down the road. They sat on the board and did other things, didn't spend money, and now we have to spend it, and that's why the spending has gone up. It's not, you know, I need to put a roof on my house. I don't want to. I would rather take that money and go on vacation. It's not a pet project of mine to put a roof on, and so these garages are not a pet project. They need to be done because they're going to be dangerous. And if we let them get dangerous, then they get closed down and no one's using them. So we have to do this stuff. And I know it's painful and we don't want to spend the money. We'd rather use it for something else. But unfortunately, when they kick the can, as Alderman O'Brien said, down the road to future boards, we end up this way. You see the school board, we're starting to now put it that deferred maintenance. We're trying to get a plan going. Director Smith and others are trying to get a plan going so we can keep the upkeep on these buildings. Because if you let it go, you're spending a lot more money, 20 years from now. So I'm for this. I'm going to vote yes on it.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. And, figures can lie and liars can figure. When I used to work in the union negotiating, we used to have that saying. But in former Alderman T. Boom's charts, I saw this area that he seemed to be quite proud of a gappage. Well, how do you get a gappage in a municipal budget? In other words, you sit on your hands and you don't do a damn thing. This parking garage didn't have one rainstorm and said, oh, the place is rusting out from underneath us. It was years for us to get there. And if we wait any longer, we're safe right now. I will park my brand-new car in the parking garage. It's only a year old. I feel safe. But however, can I say in maybe 3 to 5 years? I don't know. It's time to start dropping the dime. And this goes to other type of infrastructure that's out there. It stinks to be the board, to be handed this too. But I'll tell you, I'm proud of you guys, because we're listening and we're doing it and we're trying to get this place back. After years of regret, I'm glad we got a mayor who sits there and is working to getting this. And the parking garage is wonderful. And there's also, now that we're gonna redo the parking garages, there's got to be a little bit of frills that will help them, better lighting and different things. Am I correct, Ms. Stanfield? So it'd be all the things that you heard about the negativity on the garage have been heard and will be addressed in this renovation that's coming in the future. So let's do it. Our job as aldermen is to make this city grow, but it's also take care of what we got. And that's very important. And enough of my apostolizing, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much. So I went back and forth on this, and Director Cummings was kind enough to give me some of his time earlier today because I wanted to break this project down into phases as far as what needed to be done, what had to be done, and he was able to do that. Over the weekend, I was thinking also about the project, so I took it upon myself. I know that there is a fire inspector that lives in Ward 9. I reached out to him and was curious about why the parking garages were rated as a B under the Capital Improvement Committee when they submitted their report back in May or June, back in the spring. He sent my comments over to Mr. Duvarney, who's our fire marshal, and I received an email back, which I'm going to forward to Donna, who will forward it to everybody. But now I have a concern about the scope of this project. based on the comments that I got back from our fire marshal here in town. He mentioned to me, and I'll just paraphrase this, and I'll forward the email, but he said back in April he conducted an inspection. The reason I asked him is I thought, well, the fire inspector, the fire marshal is going to have the up or down. I wanted to know how end of life this parking garage was, and I figured, I know that we heard about parking building inspectors earlier, but I figured I would at least talk to the marshal and the fire inspectors. He rated this to be in fair condition for the following deficiencies. Elm's extinguisher cabinets in the Elm Street garage were rusted and they're missing some extinguishers. The exit signs and the emergency egress lighting is in need of replacement. Stairway doors don't close properly and are chocked in the open position, which would allow smoke into the stairway in the event of a fire. He then proceeded to let us know that he has recommendations, and these recommendations are not included in the current scope of the project, which gives me concern. And his recommendation was a sprinkler system for the existing parking structures that go to the newer 2024 codes that require sprinkler coverage for all new garages. He's under the impression that these garages are going to have electric vehicle chargers, thus electric vehicles, and electric vehicles burn very hot and require a lot of fire suppression involved in them. My concern, as I've said, is that the scope of this current project seems to involve infrastructure with concrete and whatnot, but not to fire suppression. And earlier somebody said, well, we should, we have to spend the money on the paint and the shutters or the front door or whatever. Yes, that's true, but this house also needs fire suppression to keep it safe, and that's not included. So I'd like to put that out there to this committee to find out, do we have a response to that? What's the plan here? Are we going to come back and then have to include these fire suppression measures down the road? Where are we with this? Thanks.
Go ahead, Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah, Alderman Sullivan, whenever a building goes under renovation, such as this, it has to meet, after completion of the projects, will have to meet current code. And that means, in order to make sure that is being done, it is yanking a permit. The city of Nashua has to yank a permit, like I have to yank a permit to do the bathroom in my house or something like that. So I think at that particular time, any concerns from the fire marshal and the permit process can and perhaps will be addressed. Some of this is part of the frills that, like I mentioned, like you say, the extinguisher cabinets and stuff like that. And I can guarantee you could put a sprinkler system into place, a new ultra-modern, but you ain't putting out an electrical car fire with a sprinkler system. They burn very hot, and, I think Chick Buxton will tell you there's special nozzles that are being invented to try to suppress those type of fires. Sprinkler system will be just water coming down on the exterior of the vehicle. So all this can be addressed, I think. I think let's look at what's really before us, is approving the funds to get to where these concerns can get addressed and start, to build this and remodernize and to make the building safe. And that includes sprinklers and, extinguisher cabinetries and everything else, lighting, so that people feel safe at night, when entering our garages. So there's a whole plethora of things that need to be addressed here.
So also, anytime we do a school project, we work with the fire department and like every school we've touched, we've had to put in a brand-new fire panel, new fire alarm systems. And everything that was mentioned, except perhaps the sprinkler system, I'm sure it can be covered under contingency, because I'm pretty familiar with the cost of the things you're talking about, and they're not astronomical. And I got to believe in a $15 million project, we have a fairly healthy contingency that can cover these. And again, you don't get the project completed without that sign-off from the fire marshal. So all of those things would be addressed under this project. Alderman Sullivan?
I have concerns. And with all due respect to Alderman O'Brien, I have this communication in front of me that says, here's my recommendations from our fire marshal, who I trust, and we're not addressing. It's not in the plan. It's not in the plan that I saw tonight. Now, it was only a few slides. Maybe there's something that I'm missing. But my concern is that if we move ahead with this, then we're just going to come back and say, well, we did all this, and now we have to do that, and now it's going to be this amount of money, and we should have taken some of it and spent it here and there. And
Director Cummings, you want to address the question at hand?
Yeah, absolutely happy to. So again, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. So a couple points I'd like to make clear. First and foremost, our fire department was included in the process, and they made comments, and their comments were incorporated into the design, along with our building inspector, along with our engineering department, along with all of our agencies that have jurisdiction. I can tell you that I had a couple conversations directly with Adam Pouliot, the fire marshal at the time, at this very specific issue. Everything that was mentioned, except for the fire suppression, I believe would be considered part of the general scope, and it wouldn't be covered under contingency. You'll see it as part of the project, because we would be required to provide these things to be able to have an operable building. Relative to the suppression, I don't believe that's part of the code to date. And so our design architect, our design team did not recommend us doing the fire suppression at this time. I don't believe it's part of the code, and that is why it is not part of the project. If you so elect to instruct us to actually make it part of the project, we will be happy to. What I would advise you to do is to pass this bond, and then what we will come back and ask for additional authorization for more money. It will be millions of dollars more to be able to do this project. And that's totally fine, happy to do that, but we were trying to do it with the fiscal constraints that we had in front of us, designing to the code that we currently have in hand. Thank you.
All said, Alderman Sullivan?
If I could, I mean, just from the email again, he mentions that while the currently adopted 2022 life safety and fire codes do not require sprinkler systems for existing parking structures, the newer 2024 codes do require sprinkler coverage for all new garages. I don't want to support this because I feel that based on this communication that I got, I feel that we need to step back and redo this with the suggestions included. That's my opinion. That's why I'm going to vote no on it.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think it's kind of comical that we would think that Director Cummings wouldn't be going to the fire marshal in all this. And I mean, my point was going to be, can we have Director Cummings speak, which he did, but we also have the highest ranking fireman in the city here, Chief Buxton, and I don't know if he would have anything to add on that or not. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he hasn't talked to Fire Marshal DeVarney, but I would love to hear from him because he's actually here.
I think he talks to him every single day.
I know. That's my point.
Good evening, Steve Buxton, Nashville Fire. Fire Marshal DeVarney did reach out to me today to advise me late this afternoon that he had communication with you. Director Cummings hit the nail on the head. The current code does not require it. He was throwing a flag of caution here, Fire Marshal DeVarney is, that in the future this will be required in there. We do have slight concerns if we start parking a lot of electric vehicles in these areas as far as fire suppression goes to protect the structure to some degree. As Alderman O'Brien pointed out, you are not going to put out an electric vehicle fire with a sprinkler system. It's just not going to happen. But we could help preserve the structure of the building and help prevent it from being damaged.
follow up?
Yeah, I'd follow up, thank you. I just want to say that it's not a slight to Mr. Duvarney. I like Mike, he's a great guy. So, it's just, I wanted to, since you were here, to hear
Yep.
that. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Yes. Alderman, well, Jettie. But
thank you.
Alderman Clee, you're not on the committee, right?
I'm not.
And neither is she, but she had her hand up first.
Okay.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you. Just a quick question to, I guess to Alderman Sullivan, to whomever. When it said new structure, would that be a new build or would that be a renovation of a structure? Alderman Sullivan, when you
Yeah,
said
good
new,
question. Yeah.
you said new structure.
Yeah, I'm just reading what he said in
Oh,
there.
okay, so I guess
I believe
so would this be considered a new structure because
no, it would depend on the percentage of the structure that is rehabilitated, I believe.
So is this considered a new structure or is?
No.
No. So this is just a rehabbing of an old structure, so this would not fall within that new code, so, correct?
I don't know the deep in the weed details of the new code.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that, so,
Yep.
so this would not fall within new code
I can
because.
certainly get you the answer to that question.
Okay, so that, I guess that's just my question, is this, whether or not this would fall within the new code, whether or not this is considered a new structure?
Well, actually, and this might be a technical question for somebody else in the crowd, but I believe when you pull your building permit and you start your progress on your build is actually the code you have to fall under.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Alderman Jettie?
I had the same question, so.
Like mine.
So is this going to be under the
long
new
night.
code or the old code?
Currently, it'll be under the old code.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. Chief, just briefly, I think some of the aldermen don't understand grandfathering. Could you enlighten them to what we called in the business, the building being grandfathered? This building's a natural that should be sprinkled, but they're not because of the grandfathering.
Correct. Grandfathering is something that's cited in the codes. If the building is in existence, as we just discussed, a certain percentage of the building is rehab that would trip the new code from being enacted.
The other thing is, if we're going to put electronic charging stations in, which we don't plan for as part of this project, as far as I know, and probably not the whole building, some portion of it, we can address the fire suppression part of it at that time. But these building repairs need to be done quickly to resolve the physical aspects of the building. And right now, there are no electronic charging stations in there. And we don't know yet what that fire suppression system should be. So I don't think we ought to delay this project and get done the infrastructure portion of this so we can get the buildings in good shape. We can address the fire suppression if and when they put charging stations in, and we have better understanding of what kind of fire suppression we're talking about. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I don't know if you're making a distinction between electronic charging stations and electric charging stations, but there are electric charging stations in the Elm Street parking garage as we speak.
But not the whole garage, just one section of it.
We have electric vehicles that the city owns and they charge them there in the
Okay.
Elm Street parking garage. So I don't know if
I never go in
electronic
there.
means something else, but these are electric vehicles are being charged in the garage right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? There are a few stations in that garage. I would also like to point out that both of our garages have standpipe systems that are tested on an annual basis and meet their hydrostatic tests annually. So those systems are already maintained in place.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Chief. All right, if there are no more questions, the motion before us is on R-24-106, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $15 million for renovations to the two parking garages. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Voice vote.
Nay.
Yeah, voice vote. There's nobody online. Does it have, and nothing here says it has to be by,
Yeah, it doesn't say roll call, but voice roll call.
I don't have that on mine.
Yeah. Your call.
How many yeas and how many nays?
You don't need a roll.
Don't need a roll call. So, based on what I just heard, motion passes.
There was one nay,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Before us this evening also is R-24-107, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $2,142,351 for the purchase of one compactor and 2 refuse trucks for the solid waste department, Four Hills Landfill. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
The motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R-24-107 to the full Board of Aldermen. Discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I think it was mentioned in public comment that this is a supplemental appropriation. I just wanted the record to reflect this isn't, it doesn't say it in the resolution, and it's not a supplemental appropriation. It's listed in the fiscal year 2025 SURF schedule, so I just wanted to clear that up for the record.
Director Cummings, do you have any insight into that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is absolutely correct that Alderman Sullivan just raised. I actually, at the end of our public hearing, actually consulted with our treasurer tax collector because there was some references early on by some members of the public to suggest that some of these were supplemental appropriations. That's just not factually accurate. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. Also before us this evening is R-24-108. Relative to the acceptance and appropriation of an unanticipated donation for the field replacement at Stellar Stadium. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a...
Nope, you missed one.
I did. I flipped 2 pages instead of 1.
We're talking about 108.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to move things along, boss. Excuse me. Let's back up. 108 would be relative to the supplemental appropriation of $3,500,000 of assigned fund balance into the capital project activity, police facilities improvements. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion on the floor is to recommend to the full board final passage of R-24-108. Any discussion? Alderman Wiltshire.
I just wanted to comment on the testimony of Captain Bolton about training. And he's absolutely right, of course, that training is one of the most beneficial things that we can do for our police department, or in any department, but especially our police department. Training is essential. Things, they change all the time, so we've got to stay a step above the crooks and the bad guys out there. So constant training is very, very beneficial. That's all.
I'm not doing this.
No. So this is, no. All right, so any other discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
A comment if I could. I just wanted to commend the administration because this was originally slated to be a bonded project. Now it's going to be paid for in cash, which is excellent. Because then we can pay for it, we can move on, and it doesn't live on in other budgets. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm happy that they were able to move that. And to earlier comments, as far as what training can do, you know, it not only makes the staff that we have on NPD better, but it could go to attracting a better staff. And I think a better staff, a better team raises your floor. And I think a well-trained team raises your ceiling. And I think doing this is going to allow our police department to continue on and serve the city really well. So I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? I can tell you, I look forward to providing them with this facility. The National Police Department does an outstanding job. They're the most qualified department in the state of New Hampshire, probably of New England, maybe even further beyond. And if you got the reports like Alderman Wilshire and I get from the meetings, you would see that they do a lot of work keeping us safe, and we fully appreciate it. So, with that said, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman.
Also before us is R-24-113, relative to the acceptance of $6 million of anticipated grant funds to accept and appropriate an additional $1,700,000 of unanticipated grant funds for lead-based paint hazard reduction grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend final passage.
Okay, Alderman O'Brien is recommending final passage of R-24-113 to the full Board of Aldermen. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Also before us is R-24-114, relative to the acceptance and appropriation of an unanticipated donation for the field replacement at Stella Stadium. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage with the deepest gratitude to the Stellos family.
Alderman O'Brien has made a motion to recommend to the full board final passage of R-24-114 relative to the acceptance and appropriation of unanticipated donation to the field replacement Stella Stadium. Discussion? Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution to include in the third paragraph, after the words "and making other needed renovations," to include the wording "and is to be counted as part of and not in addition to the $1,500,000 which was supplementally appropriated for this project under R-24-104, which was passed by the Board of Aldermen on October 28th, 2024." And I will defer to my colleague, Alderman Klee, to speak on that further.
Alderman Klee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I propose this amendment after seeing the resolution, mostly because when I saw the resolution, it occurred to me that after reading this, the resolution could be taken that the $200,000 could be in addition to the original $1.5 million that we had discussed back in October. And for transparency, I didn't want any of the residents or anybody out there to think that we were trying to pad the 1.5 million, because I knew that was not our intent. So I just wanted to clarify that and to, for full transparency, to make sure that everybody knew that we were just trying to accept this $200,000, because we knew, and we had spoken to it on that day, that the $200,000 would be just basically for the turf and the gift that they were giving us so that we could defer the cost to the residents and the taxpayers. And that was what the gift was for. So for full transparency, I just wanted to make sure that the wording was there properly, and so on. So I asked legal to make sure that that wording was there. And again, just for full transparency, I know that that was what our intent was, and I just wanted to make sure the wording was there. And I asked Alderman Senate if he would please bring this forward to the Budget Committee, because I knew that's exactly what we all wanted to do. So I
And
would
as-
like a favorable
As
recommendation.
chair of the joint special, we have a budget for the things we're going to do, which is satisfactorily with the 1.5 million. So it's our intent to put the 200,000 towards the first part of the repair, which is the field, which is well underway, and concur with the amendment. Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So, I'm glad to hear that. And so when I saw this, you recall at the last, the special meeting that we had where we passed the resolution, the main resolution authorizing the 1.5 million for the,
Yes.
to repair the field. There was a considerable discussion, that, I think you all recall, about acquiring a protective field cover. I think a majority of us felt that that was not necessary and not something that we wanted to pursue. And I tried to amend it to remove that field cover. But that motion failed, and
I think I can relieve feelings. There is no, it's not in the budget, and there's no one that wants to put in the field cover into the budget, so there's no intention of us buying a field cover at this point in time in this project, so it's out.
okay, so I was going to ask that that language be struck, but I'm advised by Corporation Counsel that once, I'll let him speak for himself.
Yeah. He and I spoke, I had the same feeling about taking the wording out, but he said, we don't have to buy it if nobody wants it, it's not in the budget, so we just don't buy it. No one wants to spend $400,000 for something you use once a year.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, but, I'm a lawyer, I've been a lawyer for a long time, I've been trained, and, I've learned that, words mean what they say, and you should say what you mean. And so it bothered me that this language continues to appear in this resolution after we, had a long discussion about it, and the only reason it stayed in was the fear that it might trigger the need for another public hearing. So I respect Corporation Counsel, and I bow to his superior knowledge of municipal law. And if he says we shouldn't do this, we won't do it. I understand that. But I'm very disappointed that this language continues to appear, after that, after that discussion. And, but
It couldn't even be recommended to be done unless it passed joint special, and the other night, we got the feeling no one in joint special wants it. So, it's not in the budget, and if it were in the budget for 400,000, we'd have a problem with the budget. So, it's not gonna get bought, we don't have the money for it. And it goes beyond the 400,000 because you'd need to have a storage facility, maybe another building to put these things in. This is like storing the parquet floor from the garden. And you'd need the equipment and the personnel to put it in and take it out. Huge expense, so.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with everything you say. I still don't understand why the language continues to appear. If there's no intention to buy or acquire a protective field cover, why do we continue to put it in our legislation? If we don't want it, Why do we keep putting it in there?
It
I
was-
understand that tonight, we're not gonna be able to do anything about it, but I'm just saying in the future, if
It
you
was-
don't want a field cover, don't put it in the legislation.
It was put in the legislation because they typically normally have their graduation at Stellus. If you put chairs on Stellus, you're gonna violate the warranty on the field, so we're not doing that. And it came to, you know, how do we get around that? You put a solid wooden cover on the field, not practical. And we certainly got the feeling from the first round of the Board of Aldermen, nobody on the Board of Aldermen wanted it either, so it's not going anywhere. It's not gonna be no field cover. Alderman Senate, do you have?
Yes, just some additional comments along the line of Alderman Jetty's line of thought here, because I do agree with him, and prior to overhearing the conversation between him and Corporation Counsel, I was prepared to introduce this amendment on his behalf. My understanding of it, and I'm not a lawyer, is that the language here in the resolution before us is a reference to the resolution that we already passed. So that's my understanding as to why we can't take it out of here. I think everybody in the room by now understands that it's not in the budget, nobody wants it, so we're not going to do it. But I still see Alderman Jetty's point, which I think was better debated at our last meeting regarding the topic. My wife sent me out to do the shopping for Thanksgiving the other day, and she asked me to get turkey and stuffing and potatoes and carrots and another vegetable, and I came home without the vegetables. It would be disingenuous for me to cross that off the shopping list, just as I think it's disingenuous for us to continue on with this language on our shopping list, in spite of the fact that we're not going to no way, no how do it.
But you didn't come home with steaks in addition to the list, so.
No, I just came home
This
with
would be
stuff
in
I
addition.
liked.
If it make people feel better, we can take a motion at the joint special to not do it.
That's
That
not
won't
my
happen
realm.
until December.
But be that as it may, I did agree to introduce this amendment tonight on Alderman Clee's
The amendment's fine.
behalf. What?
The amendment's fine.
Yeah, I know, and I'm speaking to it.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
I guess I'm done speaking.
Mr. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you.
Yeah, I get cut off, so I am.
Well, assert yourself. He had more
Are
to
you,
say.
did you not done?
I'm done.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
I'm done, thank you.
You have the floor.
You had the floor.
Take it.
I thought you were done
I'm ceding
speaking.
the floor.
Okay. I was actually going to find out, hearing the comments tonight from the Stellos family, which was fantastic, and understanding that 200,000 is going to go towards the repair, the current repair. Since we've appropriated the money, would it be wise for us to take the 200,000 that we've appropriated, follow me here, and we take the 200,000 from the Stellos family towards the current repair that's ongoing now. But then the 200,000 that we saved would then go into the trust fund, the Stellos Trust Fund. I don't have the name of it, but it's my understanding that we've depleted that trust fund to pay for some of this. Excuse me. So can we take the 200,000 and then move it into the trust fund, so then we have a little nest egg there for the next time we have to do this?
When we are completed with this project and there's funds left over, action can be taken by the Board of Aldermen to move that money into that fund.
So that's the time to do
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Any other comments?
I don't think that's the time to do it. I don't think that's correct. But you can worry about it then.
Yeah. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank
move
you. I'm going to support the Senate and Clee amendment. I have no problems with it. However, I look at it as a belt and suspender, as we used to call up in the state, type of amendment and everything. I think we were going to take the 200 and apply it and everything else. Nobody's into replacing the field to make money, and the city doesn't make money. anything that the city gets or grants and stuff like that gets turned over to the public anyways. So I feel comfortable with this. To some, it may be a good idea. I don't see anything wrong with it, so I am going to support it.
So the item on the amendment is on the floor for accepting the $200,000 from the Stellas family, but not increasing the budget for the Stellas Stadium from 1.5 to 1.7. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The item on the floor now is R 24-114 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, also before us is R-24-115, relative to the supplemental appropriations of $5,245,000 to $245,000 of assigned fund balance into various capital improvement projects. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
The motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of the full board of R 24-115 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $5,245,000 of assigned fund balance into various capital improvement projects. Discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. Just some clarifying questions that I didn't ask earlier. In this amount of money, there was some set aside for school district deferred maintenance. And I was digging into the capital improvement report. And I know that we moved, I think you made the motion to move money when we were at budget season. I think it might have been $500,000. And then this, there's like 1.1 million of deferred school maintenance in the capital improvement report.
Actual physical work. This money is to do the study of all the 19 school buildings to evaluate their infrastructure issues right now so that we know that, like, the high school needs a new cooler, and this year McCarthy doesn't need anything for 15 years. So we know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. It requires an engineering analysis to go through every one of those schools. It's not a small job. There's 19 schools.
No, I get it.
So
But I'm just trying to, is this kind of the part B of that? Does this just
This
round
is
out that
separate
amount?
from the monies that were passed before because that's taking care of current maintenance problems that we know today.
Okay. The other one was a comment. The City Hall HVAC is a priority B2. I think that was a question from before, but that's a B2 priority from the capital. And then I wanted to ask a question about the rail study. I did see that Matt Sullivan was still there. Back about a year ago, we had passed some dollars. It might have been $75,000 for the Task 1, Part 1. And it was my understanding at the time that that study would give us an up or down answer. And from what I'm hearing is now we need to spend 225 additional to get an up or down answer. So I want to get Matt Sullivan on the record that says this will get us an up or down answer.
Director Sullivan?
There'll be no such response this evening. No, and in all seriousness, that is true. There'll be no such answer. And the reason for that is this project will have 10 up or down moments throughout it, Alderman Sullivan. The up or down that we do know now that we were seeking with the $75,000 that I think we've received this answer is whether or not the other agencies involved here would prioritize this project and whether or not they were even aware of the efforts to go with a Nashua first option and whether that would change their tune about the project. With the DOT work that was done years ago, they were not engaged at the level that they were by the city's scope. And so through direct meetings with the MBTA particularly, and a meeting that we have planned with the FTA, the federal agency that would be involved with funding this, we believe that we have a go or no-go, meaning that the agencies are not going to obstruct our efforts to move forward with this project. With the MBTA, we even know that for the MBTA, this is their #1 priority extension project beyond the East-West Rail project that we're working on. So we have one go, no-go answer, meaning that the agencies are supportive of this effort. What we now don't know, second green light, red light kind of moment, is based on this new project scope, what do the ridership numbers, the O&M numbers, and the actual capital cost numbers tell us about the overall project cost? And do we have the ability to support the O&M? This work was done for the full scope 2 years ago under the NHDOT project, but those numbers have not been rerun for the new scenario of Nashua First Option. I would say that what we'll end up with at the end of the $225,000 is not likely to be necessarily a clear go, no-go. We know that generally with a shorter scope of work or shorter track work scope, we know that the numbers for ridership were far more favorable in Nashua than they were in Manchester, and we've now limited the size of the project. So we know that generally this is proportionally going to be a much more favorable project, but how much more favorable? That's really what this $225,000 is going to tell us, what money we're saving as we potentially go to just 2 stations or potentially even to 1 station at the Pheasant Lane Mall location. Those are numbers we're kind of speaking to in conceptual ways right now, but we don't have real numbers to back that up.
Could I just ask?
Follow
on? Will this additional money to further the study, will it help us identify federal funding for this?
Yes, that is also included in the scope, and I would refer to this much more as this is sort of setting the table for the business case for the actual extension. We'll ultimately need to do a financial plan update. That's not included here. The financial plan is this 200-page document that was done for DOT that does not contemplate Nashua First. That will come later. I want to be really clear and transparent about that, but this is the basic business case, O&M, capital, how do all of these things work together? But I hope that answers your question a little broader. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well said, Alderman Sullivan.
Yes, thanks.
Alderman Thibodeau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think these are worthwhile projects. I mean, I think I would not destroy the stone house at Greeley Park. I think that's something that we've been waiting for along with the band shell. You know, the fish passage, I think is, again, don't get rid of the dams. I think that's worthwhile. And obviously the Hunt building is another one of those buildings that got kicked down the road and now we got to fix up. And I think it's not to what somebody previously said about it. I think it's an important building in the city, so thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So if I could, through you to Director Sullivan, O&M, what does that mean?
Operations and maintenance, my apologies.
Okay, thank you. And could I ask,
Just in case nobody could hear that because he wasn't on a mic, it's operations and maintenance, O&M.
thank you. And so the band shell, is this the band shell on the east side of Concord Street?
Yes, the existing band shell.
And what is the plan for that?
Alderman Jettie. Brian Conant, Superintendent of Parks. The plan for the band shell, and there's several things that need to be addressed. If you look at the overall structure, the steel on it needs to be sandblasted and sanded and repainted. The roof currently leaks. The panels that are used as to kind of push the sound where you want it to go are made of plywood and have all started to rot. You know, they've had to be replaced over the years. And this money would go ahead and address that. It would also address the wading pool too, that was built, I believe, in the 1920s. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
Follow-up question, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, you know, I'd like to know what the cost is. The reason I'm asking is that this band shell was largely financed by the Nashua Rotary Club many years ago. And, I've asked, what the cost would be. I never got an answer because there's a potential. I can't speak for, I'm a member, and so is Alderman Sullivan of the Rotary Club. We can't speak for the organization, but there's a chance that they might be willing to contribute something because their name is on it. So what is the cost of repairing the band?
So I've met with several different contractors there, and you cannot get somebody to give you an estimate when it's going to be over $25,000 because it would preclude them from bidding on the job. So I've gotten verbal estimates from these people, and it seems everyone seems to be around $150,000. That's where I've got this pegged. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that information.
And Alderman Jettie, if the Rotary Club wanted to donate, much like the Stellis family, to a project, we could do the same thing with a piece of legislation and accept the money and offset the cost.
You have to guarantee that it doesn't include a protective cover.
Good point.
Yeah.
We won't
On the
write
waiting
into
pool.
legislation.
Any other questions? Alderman Senate.
Not a question, just some comments. I came in here tonight fully prepared to vote against this because, quite frankly, I don't like the way it's presented. The smallest piece of this is maybe 45,000. That doesn't seem like it's a threshold where we got to loop things into 14 different resolutions in one resolution. That being said, everybody here tonight has made stellar cases for their projects, and there's not one project here that I want to see suffer at the expense of the other just because I would prefer to see them come all forward. I am just going to say that we took a lot of leeway in getting here tonight just to be able to discuss this and asking for the 45 million exemption that really allowed this to even make it to the table. I think it would have been incumbent on us to give a little bit of that leeway back, because if somebody wants to come by tomorrow night and speak again for or against this at the top of our meeting tomorrow, they can get 3 minutes to address 14 different items. I don't think that seems fair. I'm not going to belabor the point by voting against it because, again, there's not really any unworthy projects here. It's not a big haul on the tax rate because there's no bonds here. We're spending cash. So I am going to support this tonight, but I would prefer to see less package deals like this in the future. That's all.
Just for clarification, it won't be on the agenda tomorrow night. None of these will.
Well, in 2 weeks then.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. While I was up at the State House, I tried really to promote the concept of commuter rail for Nashua and Manchester. I mean, let's face it, anybody here park a car down in Boston? I don't know how the people of Boston really make money because what they, have to pay for their parking. And you look at it, what a commuter rail, yes, it'll go down to Boston and it'll bring the good folks back home, making the Boston wage, enhancing the quality of life here in Nashua. But when you're up at the State House, it's kind of tough to argue with those good people of the North who are more worried about their cows and that the DOT shut down Route 16 because the maple syrup truck weighed too much, in the springtime. So it's trying to get them up there to realize it. It's the point to why former Alderman T-Boom took a sovereign matter that was us voting whether we want the tax cap or not, but he presented it to the whole state, 400 representatives. You tell me what the good people of Bartlett, New Hampshire are voting on a Nashua issue. That was shameful. Shameful. That was a backdoor way to get one man's prior objective. And there's others involved with this. Is the right way or not? If you wanted to do that, put it on the ballot. But I think a lot of this needs to be done. Again, it fits into the category, people like Alderman T. Boone and others in the past, other mayors, kicked the can down the road, and here we are, baby. And it's up to us to try to fix it. I'm proud that we are, and we really need to do this. So I am going to support this, and hopefully we have something better for our taxpayers because of the actions of this board tonight. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for final passage of R 24-116, recommend to the full board, relative to supplemental appropriation of $5,245,000 of signed fund balance in the various capital improvement projects. We're done with discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
New business ordinances, there are none.
No, 116.
Oh, 116.
How could you forget that one?
I love your spirit, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Flipping so many pages, you guys. Okay. Hang on. All right. R-24-116, which is relative to the supplemental appropriation of $800,000 for assigned fund balance into Department 128, Risk Management, account 89650, transferred to the Property and Casualty Self-Insurance Fund for the purpose of rebuilding a fire truck. And boy, how could I forget that one?
That's what I said. All right, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of the full board of R 24-116 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $800,000 assigned fund balance in the Department 128 Risk Management Account 89650, transfer to Property and Casual Self-Insurance Fund for the purpose of rebuilding a fire truck. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business ordinances,
There are none.
tabled in committee,
None.
general discussion? None? Public comment?
Right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Jettie?
I would just like the record to show that Alderman Sullivan was in favor of spending an extra 200,000.
He was?
What do you mean? We've already appropriated it.
Okay.
Thanks for calling that out.
All right, public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman? Alderman Senate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to note, at the beginning of our prior meeting, some folks may have noticed that myself, Alderman Moran, and Alderman Lopez came running in at the 0 hour. The three of us attended the informational meeting over at Elm Street Middle School this evening in regards to the planned warming station that is anticipated to run from December through, I believe, the end of April, which is nice because winter doesn't end in March. It sounds like there's a pretty good plan in place. They're going to start reviewing the proposals that they've received for staffing. They have pretty good plans in place to secure that facility so that that use doesn't interfere with any other uses being used at that building. So I just want to commend our health department on taking the initiative with that. Thank you.
By the way, I'd just like to say that if I cut you off earlier, I'm sorry. I didn't know you weren't finished. All right, anybody else? All right. Alderman O'Brien.
Well, remarks by Alderman, if I may take liberty, I would like to wish all my fellow aldermen here a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving.
You won't
To
be
all
here
this-
tomorrow night?
Aren't you going to be here tomorrow night?
Is it tomorrow night?
We have
Well,
Full board
Board of
Alderman.
There'll be more of us for you to thank.
You can thank the whole board.
Yeah, you can say it again.
All right, I'll show up. Okay.
Motion?
But anyways, a motion. He wants a motion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
The motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 10:09 PM.
Hey, Tim.